Hello and welcome to another Lord of the Rings Rise to War video. I am the player who plays as the King Under the Mountain, and today I'm going to be talking through one of my favourite commanders in 2.0. He, now after 2.5, I think is even better than what he was before. We're going to be talking through some builds for him, we're going to be talking through some skills, we're going to be talking through formations that he might be in, his gear, and all that kind of jazz. And of course, that commander is the Shadow, who I have very recently got to Z1 by using his little refine trick. So I'm probably going to start by showing you that the refine trick was good. I got 100 items out of my own Shadow by using the current Ascension voucher because he was ascended. So I used one of these. And I don't think Shadow now shows up, but because he had 100 of his own item in, I managed to get 100 of his item and 40 undying items out of him by switching them around within it. I have got a video on that. It's probably worth watching if you've got something like that in your account and you want to find an easy way to sort of up your undying or ascended Shadow, to be honest, without having to trade vouchers, so definitely give that a watch. For that reason, though, we are now going to go back into the Shadow himself, and we're going to talk through the skills to start with, because I think now his skill set is even more amazing than probably what it was before, just because we get more skill points than what we had, and he doesn't have to be as high as in his Zenith levels. And I think, if I'm being honest with myself, I personally, if I had to bet on someone coming out as being top end of the meta by the time it's all settled down, he is one of those people that I would have in there, and I'll explain some pitfalls with him, but I'll also go through why I think that is and how he is, how he's pretty good. So because of the changes that they've made now, where you're getting more for the T2 vouchers, and they're obviously a little bit more viable to use, particularly with extra points, I think he's now become a really fantastic commander. So we'll talk through skills to start with, and then we'll probably go into the build. So Undertaker's a great skill. In fact, we should probably start with the R5, which is probably his main skill, and then go back, and then we'll explain how it works. So, his R4, not R5, is Shape of the Void. And for the first 6 rounds, he has a 90% chance of dealing dual blows, which means he acts twice in that round. It goes one after the other, bang, bang, 2 normal attacks, right? At level 5, this gets plus 10 attack, which is always pretty handy. And at level 10, his normal attack damage, so all this skill tree works together, is plus 15% for 10 rounds. Which again, let's be honest, it's good. It's for the whole battle. That's a lot of extra damage, right? This then reacts with the Undertaker, which is a great skill. And normal attacks then deal 120% damage to 2 enemy formations on top of this attack that's already happening. At level 5, it goes up to 3 formations, and at level 10, a little bit lame, if I'm being honest, plus 5 commander attack. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not asking too much of him, but okay, 5 extra commander attack, fair. From there, we'll probably go on to Hunting Expert, because these 3 skills work quite well together. This adjustment to this is crazy, by the way. You can add 80 attack with Hunting Expert, because of the way it stacks up. So it's 10 each damage is dealt. So by the end of round 1, pretty much, you can have plus 80 attack. I will come on to why I think that's important, and why he's really unique, because he's one of the only people who can actually do this after he's been debuffed. Then his initiative can go up by, again, plus 2 for 8 stacks. And his defense, it's a shame it's commander defense, not unit defense, would be nice. But again, can't ask for too much. Stacks up to 8 times also. His other R0 skill is Black Numenorian, which people didn't used to invest too much time into. And now I think there'll be a lot of testing around this skill, because actually the normal attack, which again goes twice in those first 6 rounds, is inflicting 180% focus damage. Now that's a decent flat damage for 10 rounds, particularly when for the first 6 you're doubling it up. At level 5, you've got minus 10 defense, which is also handy, but not exactly, fantastic. And then this, again, this minus 10 attack, also quite handy, because you're still further debuffing. So if Sauron's already debuffed the Dane, for example, and then you're hitting the Dane, which you'll hit first, another 10 attack off him isn't going to hurt you. It's going to hurt them more than it hurts you, let's face it. So pretty useful. So his entire kit now, I think, is very usable. And this bottom tree here, needing some focus to obviously highlight the damage, has made some of the builds a little bit more interesting. And I'm going to talk through a couple of gear sets that I think will work okay. And I would actually go about things a little bit differently, and I'll kind of explain why. If my shadow was R4, I would have 10 points in Shape of the Void, because I think that's the most important one. I would have... This is where I'd probably then tie myself up in knots a little bit. I think I'd probably have 3 points in here. And I'd have 1 point in here. And I'd have 10 points in here. That would be my R4 build, personally. I know some people would rather have these points in here, but I'm going to explain why I think that's a good R4 build through his uniqueness. So, when we come to the interaction with commanders. In fact, I will explain that now, because it makes sense to explain it now. So why not? So, because of the way Sauron now works, by not having pre-battle madness, they've changed that. I think it's great that they've changed it. They changed some stuff with the enemy, which makes him still Sauron very much meta, because you can debuff people. So you're debuffing attack, defense, and focus of 3 enemy commanders, minus 15, modified by his focus stat. So the average on that is about 17%-ish, something like that, by the time someone's built a pretty slow, pretty tanky, fairly focused Sauron, right? This affects every formation in the other commander's formations, so realistically, this is going to happen to you every single fight you fight Sauron. Now, if you roleplay, that's pretty much every time you're going to fight, but if you roleplay, unless you're fighting evil versus evil, you're not going to see it as often. But if you do, he's going to basically tank you down every single time. So your attack stat is going to go down by that 17% every single time. And that goes for all commanders. That's Dane, that's whoever, and this is why people are trying to increase attack and stack the gear to get to sort of 250, 270 attack, because that's the way they're going to keep hitting damage like a truck. Shadow's a little bit different, because you can rebuff yourself, if that's the right kind of term. So, this happens to your Shadow, right? So, at the moment, my Shadow's got 211 attack. It goes down by 17%, say. I can also then instantly build that back up to being over 200 by getting this to stack. So even at 3 points, I can get 24 extra attack, which, if I just pull out my trusty calculator, which isn't so trusty, if I do 211 times 0.83, so that's one, it takes me down to 175 attack. I get 24 attack back. I'm back at 199 from that skill alone, just with 3 points in it. And then I've got 10 points from this as well. So I'll be back over 200, right? Now, there is no damage dealer in the game that can redo that to himself to help his kit. That's a fact. And I think that's what makes him really unique and allows you to do some different builds, right? This point in here is not necessarily because I think 18% focus damage is going to do me the world of good. It's to destroy some more stacks of White Council every time I attack. Okay, so that kind of explains this skill here. Now, the more points you can get in this, great. But the reality of it is, and with the way that he now is being built, at the sort of Zenith levels, you're talking about going like this. So, you're going to fill these up. And now, obviously, I'm at Zenith 1. I will then fill this up. So if I'm going to go down... If you're at Respect 10, I would argue do it slightly differently. But for now, I'm basically looking like this. What I could really do with at level 50 is probably another point. But I can't have it all. So I might end up doing 9 points in this, for example. And then giving myself the extra point here to make sure I'm back over 200 attack. With that skill, the R3 skill, and how it kind of regenerates the extra attack, obviously you can put more points in there and you will just get a higher physical damage skill, but I'm going to try and tell you why I would do it the way that I'm doing it, because I think it makes him even more unique, because you are doing some actually decent focus damage and some decent physical damage by building him in a way that suits this need. So for me, if you're doing the focus damage option while still trying to run physical damage, I would run something like this. and I would be looking at around, it's about 94 attack. 94 focus. What I would like to try and look at is I would like to try and look at something like having, say, a focus chest piece, because at the moment that was unit defense, which will take me up over 120 focus, and then I think you'll see a lot more damage from the Black Numenorium, for example. Is this the most ideal weapon for him? No, but if you're running that focus and your physical damage build as well, because the skills you do need both in that build. I would run this just because it's equal distance there and you're getting good damage. Same as I would use this because you're getting a little bit of both, so you never min-max in one or the other. So that would be how I would do that to make sure I'd got sort of 120 focus. Now, you could just run something like a fine smoking pipe, for example, on him, and take the focus from here, and you could run your Axe of Chasm Doom as the first one, so you're taking your full attack from here, and then you could take full attack from this, and you could probably run something like a golden skin, which I actually think is probably best in slot for him because you get some focus and some physical attack attributes from it, and you could kind of hybrid him that way. So if you are going to run him with this focus build as well, I think that's a really great way of doing it as far as things go. You kind of need to min-max that focus. I also think he's a great free-to-play option because of the R2 skill. So naturally, if you're a bit more free-to-play, you're not going to have masses of gold items, but you can boost his attack to a significant level by using this. So you'd probably only stick with these 3 skills if you were going to run a more free-to-play build. And you can say, even with purples, get over 200 attack and still cause some damage to your enemy, which I think there's not many commanders that can sort of vouch for that now that Sauron can do what he can do. And if you had a Witch King in there as well, there really isn't many commanders that can do that. So I think that plus 80 attack in here, particularly for a free-to-play player, could be really really important. Obviously, you could run him purely physical. I've got no qualms with that, and you would just go for your best in-slot pieces for physical. If it was me, I would run probably an Alforberg here, and I would run a Palantir here, just so I've still got really good attack, and I'm getting some unit defense in there to help him tank. I do think it's important to have some unit defense on damage dealers if possible, but I think Shadow is almost a little bit different because he has got that option to do this hybrid physical and elemental damage, which not too many commanders can pull that off well. I think he can pull it off well, and I've seen reports recently where he's doing over 200k damage. I'll go through some counters and some kind of benefits to him in a formation shortly, but in the meantime, I suppose I better go on to the Doom-formed maces, which are pretty cool as far as uniques go. Again, for the stats, it's great. I do actually think this is pretty good because I believe this stacks. So you're likely, if you're playing roleplay, that your tank is going to have trolls anyway, so happy days. You're going to get this sort of minus 6% stack in every round. The Refine's nice, to be honest. It does help him, so you don't have to have as much defense gear on him because he's naturally defending through the unique. So some people look at this and go, it's a little bit too specific. For me, in a evil RP or even an NRP formation, to be honest, where trolls are likely to be in there as a tank these days, I think it's a really viable unique with a very, very decent sub-skill would be for me. Obviously, you're hoping really and truthfully that you get one of these 2 roles on your unique if you're going to upgrade it, which both are useful if you're going to run him in this sort of hybrid role of focus damage and physical damage. I also quite like his Zenith outfit. I got that one as well instead of the Arwen one because I knew I'd never ever use Arwen, but I do like his Zenith outfit. I mean, he looks pretty cool. As far as Nazgul go, he's up there as one of the better ones. I'm going to go into the pitfalls, and I think I've gone through a lot of the benefits there. He does churn out a lot of damage, and like I said, I do think as it settles, he will be very high in the meta. He's actually one of the few recommendations that I'm making to people about a commander going forward, because I think he has got that potential. What I will say if I ever remember where I was at with that, because Sauron's face has just distracted me. I was going to talk about his pitfalls, of course. Right. Even though he does kind of counter the Sauron debuff, obviously it does affect him because you're still getting debuffed on the focus side of it. So your focus damage, if you are aiming for that build and you've only got 90 focus and it gets debuffed, you're not doing as much what you can with Black Númenor. That's why it's quite hard to build your gear to go both ways, but it is possible, in my opinion. The other thing that's a bit of a hard counter, particularly in roleplay, but now in NRP, that Gil's kind of sadly gone back into the meta. Let's just take everything off him because he doesn't deserve any equipment as far as I can see. So his evade with Kingly Kin is a very big shadow counter. Basically, Shadow with his normal attack, then in those first few rounds particularly, you're not getting the maximum amount of damage out of him. He's not stripping White Council, which is one of the things he's fantastic at. If there's no Gil, your Shadow is stripping White Council as fast as anyone, really. Probably Saruman is the one that comes to mind that's as quick at stripping White Council. Which means, again, and not to go back into his positives, but he isn't just a damage dealer. He's helping the rest of your formation by stripping away things like White Council. And if there's an Undying, he's stripping away the Undying evade as well, which I can't really complain about. So, but if he runs into a Gil, obviously those first 2 rounds are quite important to a Shadow. It kind of counteracts the fact that one of the skill sets that people put on him is naturally Warcry, because they want to get as much damage out of him in the first 2 or 3 rounds. Sad thing is, you're not getting that effect from him. So I've kind of been recommending to people that they run a Sharp Blade or a Might set, or a defensive attribute set, because I think Warcry, in the current system of how people are using Gills and Undyings, you're not getting the maximum amount of Warcry at the moment, as far as I can see. Perseverance is an okay set for him, but again, his damage is first 6 rounds pretty much, so it's difficult in that regard. So Gil is a pretty hard counter for him. He will still strip White Council during Gil's evade, because the elf evasion is only 70%. And he is hitting squishy elf, so when he does hit him, he still hits him like a truck. So that's kind of that point, is a bit of a counter to him. Witch King also debuffs him quite significantly if you run into that as well. And naturally, you're running into White Council for a large proportion of your hits. So, again, some of his kit is countered, but also it is a positive to some degree, I would say. If I was running him in formation and I was in roleplay for evil, I would probably run him with Saruman. I would run Saruman, Shadow, Witch King, and Sauron formation, I think. Granted, in the current meta, that has its problems, because both Saruman and Shadow are great at stripping White Council, but if there's a Gil in there, it's problematic. But realistically, you're going to hit more than you should, I would suggest. And with you not having the debuff from a Sauron in roleplay, I think it kind of balances itself out, whereas you're debuffing them, so that's quite a nice formation. NRP, it's great when you don't run into a Gil formation, because you are getting the maximum out of him. But realistically, I do think alongside a Dane, I think he's very, very viable to give you sort of like 2 different forms of the same sort of damage, and also giving you some focus damage alongside, say, a Gandalf the White and a Sauron. You could run him alongside your own Gil, but I don't know. It's not for me. It's the elf, because then you're restricted to troops. So I think you take away then some of the options that you have for your barracks, for if you need a B team, for example. And I've just realised I've spent way too much of that video focusing on that elf. So, like I say, for me, I think he's a fantastic commander. It's so pleasing to see people testing out different things with commanders now, mainly due to be honest, the skill change from Sauron, which is fantastic from the devs to sort of change that skill, and the Head of White Council skill for Saruman, which I think has given some new options to the game, some new formations. But yeah, he is a massive help to your formation. It's not, you can't just look at Shadow's damage stat, which is still good, particularly for a T2. It's fantastic, to be honest, but you're also looking at how quickly he strips White Council, or those kind of things, how quickly he strips evasion, and helps the rest of your formation hit hard, Otherwise, if you're hitting a Gale formation, there's a very big chance that if you don't have something like a Shadow, and even if you do have a Shadow, there's a chance that something like a Bjorn Nuke, for example, will still be affected by White Council. Shadow does help with getting to that point, and I think it's quite viable. Some people have spoken about 3DDs recently, so you could do a Shadow, Saruman, Sistaro, or Skalhel formation with Sauron up front. Again, I'm not against it. I think it's got its possibilities, but again, I wouldn't want to see an evil formation too often without him, because I think he's a fantastic damage dealer. And with that, that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk to in regards to Shadow. I like I say, for me, he's going to be in the meta for a very long time, particularly now we get more skill points and higher Zenith levels and things like that. So, but as always, up to yourself. So if in doubt, always follow your nose.